is both for me a very exciting moment, a great honor for myself, and also somewhat intimidating, because I'm talking about somebody who has actually changed the world, and I'm going to try to describe some of the things that this individual we're celebrating, John Tuzo Wilson, what he's actually been able to accomplish, not just in this community, but for the global community beyond. Unfortunately, most of you will never have really an opportunity to delve deeply into John. I had the opportunity to meet him when I was much younger, still had, sort of brown hair. Bald spot was always there, unfortunately, but he passed away in 1993. And much of what he did in terms of service to the world was done in the 1960s, 1970s. So I'm going to give you some snapshot as to what he accomplished as a career scientist, as well as what he has accomplished for our particular community. John graduated as one of the first students ever from the University of Toronto in the geophysics program. That was back in 1930. And after that, he went on and did postgraduate studies. He worked towards trying to understand large-scale geological systems. And he did this in Cambridge, he did it in Princeton. He came back to Canada and worked in the Geological Survey of Canada. And there he actually started working in the area of glaciers. So all of us are concerned about glaciers, warming of the environment and all of that now. We take it for granted that you can actually see glaciers from satellite and remote imaging. Well, John was the pioneer who actually started the idea of aerial surveillance of glaciation and how that actually worked. He is the second Canadian to actually fly over the North Pole. You can imagine the time frame. You're looking at propeller-based aircraft moving into the high Arctic. There is nobody there to save you. The idea of traveling long distances basically doesn't exist. How many of you have flown overseas to a place like Asia, like China? I did that a couple of months ago. We went right over the North Pole. I took my pictures. We take it for granted now. These are things that were pioneered by people like John and his compatriots in that particular time frame. But John saw the world as his laboratory. That's the mantra that he always had. And he was interested in mountain building. He was interested in glaciation, interested in the oceans. And so he traveled the world from the standpoint of trying to understand how the world system worked. Ultimately, he was awarded 15 honorary degrees from different institutions around the world. He was awarded more than 35 medals and honors, awards from various societies associated with geophysics, with geography, and others. And the question I would pose to you is, do you have any idea why this individual who's here in the Toronto and Mississauga area would be world famous? And my guess is you've not heard his name associated with something that you, again, understand as common knowledge. Back in the 1930s, 1940s, if you would ask anybody about the continents, they would have told you they're fixed in place. It's like going back hundreds of years before. If somebody had asked you about the shape of the Earth, it would be flat, and everybody knew it was flat. Until, of course, there was enough evidence to convince people that it wasn't. And the same had been going on from the standpoint of our understanding of the continents. It was assumed that the continents were fixed in place and the Earth somehow boiled underneath them, and that was responsible for volcanism, for earthquakes, and so on. Well, we know different today. We call it plate tectonics, continental drift. In fact, the ground we're sitting on right now is moving under our feet. We're moving it along with it, of course, but at the rate that your fingernail grows, you're actually moving in time on a conveyor belt. You have to imagine it like a pool of water with ice blocks floating in it. And the ice, of course, can float on top because it's less dense and it can actually move around. The arguments that the world wasn't static, those arguments were taking place in the 1950s. And in fact, Wilson was one of those individuals who said the world did not have plate tectonics. Why would that be the case? Well, scientists, they're ingrained with the idea of being conservative. You do not simply throw away or accept a new idea or throw away an old one without evidence. And so over a decade, evidence was collected. But that evidence, it wasn't, in a sense, concrete to nail it. So what you're looking at here with Wilson is somebody who is really a truly outstanding Canadian. He has done something very special for this community, a legacy that will last for generations into the future with the growth of the University of Toronto, Mississauga. But he's also changed the nature of how we perceive the world around us, what it is that we actually stand on, why it is we have to be concerned and take protection from the standpoint of the movement of the Earth and what that actually means. And of course, it goes beyond that. It transcends into human interaction, with our relationship now of China and other Asian countries being brokered in part by his wisdom, his insights. So thanks very much, and thank you for celebrating John Tuzo Wilson.